This subject, be bold, stay real in spirituality. When Kumar asked me whether this subject is apt, I said it cannot be more apt than this, because today we are in a situation where everybody is confused as to what is true and what is not. And the more perspectives come out, the better. So I will give the mic to Swamiji to express his views on the subject. Thank you.
Thank you, Sridharji. And at the outset, again, I would like to thank Mr. Kumar and all the organizers on behalf of the Chinmay Mission. We were invited to this program as a spiritual perspective. I'm very glad to be here with all of you. Be bold and stay real, I should say, is a very theme of spirituality itself. It is all about inner strength. How do you face the challenges of life? And also it is about finding what is real, what is unreal, moving away from unreal to the real. Asatoma, Sadgamaya. So that's a very theme itself of spirituality. And so for today, in the modern life, as we face so many challenges, we find we need more and more inner strength to face the challenges of life as we encounter more and more people going through stress, worries, tensions, anxieties, depressions, whatnot. So Swami Chinmayananda used to say that the tragedy of modern life is decreasing happiness amidst increasing comforts. So how is it that we can empower ourselves is what spirituality is about. And I found that one of the best books of spiritual empowerment is the Bhagavad Gita. And so we derive a lot of inspiration from the Gita, where Arjun represents a common man like each one of us. And when he is face to face with a challenge, and the surprising thing is he has prepared himself for that challenge. For more than 12 years, he prepared himself, acquired weapons, did what not. And when he came face to face with the challenge, he collapsed. So the knowledge that the Lord gave him is the knowledge which anyone requires to face the challenges and be successful, at the same time be happy. So with just this short introduction, I would just like to leave it open if any of us would like to have interaction, and then we could interact with each other.
I would like to express my points of view on this subject, then we'll open it up. You know, I am fortunate enough to have a kind of a vantage position to observe two professions or two occupations. One is journalism and one is spirituality. And it's been an interesting journey. This is my 23rd year in journalism and 25th year in pursuing spirituality. And when I look at both, journalism is about asking questions, relevant questions. It's said that the truth is out there. Go by experience. Just go and ask questions, even if the experience is good, the truth may not be good, just go and question, right? That's journalism. When you come to spirituality, the truth is not there, the truth is here. Completely diametrically opposite. Just be in the experience, don't ask the question. Two diametrically opposite professions, and I've been practicing both, or 1 foot here and 1 foot there, for over 25 years, okay? There is a similarity as well. When you come to journalism, there are two types of journalists. Okay, I'm dwelling on journalism just to get to the point here. One is the quiet type, who goes about quietly searching for his sources, and he's unearthed scams. And so many scams which are unearthed are the work of some excellent journalists who have lived true to the teachings that they have learned when they were apprentices or students, right? Then there's the other type, who are loud, who are screechy, who are very noisy, okay? Who ask irrelevant questions, correct? Who thrust the mic, who probably ask the lady if her son or daughter is lost. Aapko kaise lagta hai? Now, when you see these two types, okay, I won't pass judgments here. I'm just sort of throwing it open, okay? Agenda-based. There is an agenda behind all this, right? So what is the agenda? I'm just opening it up. Spiritualism. There are people who quietly go about doing things. Great work. You won't even know about it till you actually come across them and you know, oh God, they've impacted society so much. They don't make a noise. There's the other kind, who see spirituality as an industry, who are there to make money, who see a rudderless population wanting support, wanting to follow something where they get hope. They see it as a business. They see it as a target group. Wrong or right? That's not for me to say. I'm just saying that this is what I observe as a journalist in the spiritual world, as a spiritualist in the journalism world. So my attempt throughout my career has been to make journalism spiritual and approach spirituality from a journalistic viewpoint. And the questions that I have been trained many years back that I should apply in journalism. Now, when you come back here, the question we want to ask is, why are the noisy people, the loud sound guys, more predominant? Why do we think, have you heard of this kind of statement? अरे सब जर्नलिस्ट ऐसे ही होते हैं, सब स्वामी जी ऐसे ही होते हैं. One label. Because the more louder you are, unfortunately today, the more you are heard. And the more louder you get, the more you are assumed to be true. What happens is the people who are true to their soul, if you have to use the word, they're doing it. They're not bothered about this loudness. But the ordinary people fail to notice that is where probably you need to concentrate and go. Okay? And that's where this subject comes, where as a population, as a janta, what do we choose to concentrate on? Yes, I was attending some sessions here, okay? And there was so much discussion about India has gone to the dogs, there's so much corruption, ye, wo, duniya bhar ki cheezein, okay? Fine, everything is wrong, okay? Everything is wrong. Percentage de do, kitna percentage? 90% India has gone to the dogs? ठीक है, 10%. Can we concentrate on the 10%? That means that 10% is right. That means there are individuals who are really doing a good job. So can we concentrate on them? Can we make that 10% 11%, 12%, 13%? The point is what we choose to concentrate on. So when we come back to this subject of spirituality and asking questions and staying bold, my point of view is that the clutter and the noise needs to stem down. We need to be aware as to where the noise is coming from and where the sound. Making sense? It's easy to say that nothing's working. The point is that a lot is working as well. And I'm a newspaper man. I know how the industry functions. Bad news sells. You get 2 TV channels. I'll give you an example. Many years back, those who have seen Doordarshan, okay? So we have a Tejeshwar Singh, very handsome man, who used to read the news. Good evening, this is Tejeshwar Singh, reading the news for it. Okay, look at the swar. If you see in terms of an octave, okay, Mandra Saptak, Mandra Saptak ka pa, okay, that's where the swars. You go to a TV, a radio channel, he'll also speak at that level. Today, it's diametrically opposite. He speaks in the 3rd octave, the tar saptak pa. Aap dekh rahe hain, is there. Are you seeing the difference? Why? If you were to have a newsreader speaking in the Mandra Saptak pa, would you listen to him? Today, just imagine this, okay? There are 2 TV channels and there's heavy rain in Bombay, okay? Overnight. You watch both the channels. So Bombay is not flooded. The civic guys are doing a great job, okay? Assume that. Only 3 areas are flooded, okay? So the right side guy is speaking in Mandra Saptak and he's telling you the truth. Nothing is flooded, everything is fine. Look, the cars are going, everybody's walking on the road. The left side guy is the Tar Saptak guy. देखिए कितना भारी शहर, क्या हो रहा है देखिए, look, concentrating on those 2 places where it's flooded. Which channel will you watch? Be honest with me. Which channel will you watch? You will watch the noisy one. Correct? How many of you all? Be honest, be honest, be honest. Is the noise that gets to you and probably you assume that that's the truth. So the point here, and both of us would like to poke and leave the answers open, is that there's a lot of good news that is taking place. A lot of work is being done. As a journalist, I've profiled so many of them, and it's very heartening. It's just that the system works in such a way that it makes us believe that everything is bad. But that's not the truth, So as spiritualists, and if you are interested in spiritualism, just pursue and blow up, and not blow up, that just, what is the word? Ignite, that's the word. Ignite these people who are just silent lights, and make that, uska wick jo hai, usko thoda bada karo, usme thoda oil zyada dalo, taki logon ko dikhe. I feel that's where we come.
What is more important, the means or the end? As in the Mahabharata, you see, the Pandavas adopted unfair means to win. And each of them met a horrible end.
The Gita goes to say that the means are as important as the end. That's what Karma Yoga is all about. And even in the Mahabharat war, I would beg to differ here, but as he said, there is no thrusting of opinion. I just express my opinion. Even in the Mahabharat war, it appears that Pandavas adopted unfair means, but there was no unfair means adopted. I'll give you just few examples. Example of Bhishma. Now, first of all, Bhishma has a boon which is absolutely, it makes him invincible. And as long as he is there, Pandavas just cannot win. For 10 days he was there, the battle went on for 10 days, and after he fell, in 8 days the entire battle, everything got over. So it was very important that Bhishma has to fall. Now, in a war, a strategy is adopted. And they know the weak point of Bhishma is that he will not fight against Shikhandi. So they put Shikhandi in front of Arjun, and Arjun fights. Now, why did Bhishma stop fighting? Was it the fault of Arjun or was it the fault of Bhishma? It is a weak point which is attacked by the enemy. That is not unfair. And it is not even an unfair practice in a war. It is not that Bhishma was on the ground. Bhishma was on chariot, Arjun is on chariot. The rules of war are being followed. That is one. Second example, Dronacharya. Again, it is a strategy. Dronacharya is attached to his son Ashwathama, so the announcement is spread. It's a rumor which is spread. Ashwathama is dead. Now the elephant was dead. Ashwathama asks Yudhishthira, and Yudhishthira says, maybe the elephant or the son. I'm not sure, but that time Krishna blows the conch. Now Dronacharya could have verified with somebody else. Why does he have to sit quietly there saying, I'm just not going to fight the war, and then he gets hit, he gets killed. So strategy is adopted. So many people think that way, that, in Mahabharata, Bhagavan did everything wrong and somehow he won the war, so, we can also adopt unfair means. The person who taught Arjun that the means are as important as the goal, why would he contradict that? And he himself lived that way, number one. Number two, that is seen in our culture also. You see, during Vijayadashmi, what do? There is one thing called Ayudh Puja that we do. So we worship all the means that we have. So in an office, they will worship, accountant will worship his computer and his books and all that. Some in the home, the homemaker will worship the utensils and so many things. The means are as important as the goal is a philosophy of the Indian culture. And there cannot be a compromise in the means, especially when the means is a noble, a selfless cause. Mahatma Gandhi adopted the same method. Means is as important as the goal. Just freedom is not important. Ahimsa is important. Non-violence is important. So that is the teaching of spirituality, that we have to focus on the means. Karmanyavadhikaraste ma phaleshu kadachana means that. It does not mean that don't expect a result. A lot of people think that, it's a very impractical philosophy. But then when Mahendra Singh Dhoni says that we are not bothered about winning, we will take it as the game comes ball by ball and everybody claps. Wow, what a fantastic philosophy. It's the same thing. When industrialist says that, we have to be process-oriented, not just result-oriented, it is the same thing. They have a concept called TQM, Total Quality Management. Every step, quality has to be there, then the product is total quality product. So means are as important as the goal, and there cannot be a compromise in that. Unfortunately, when we think any means can be adopted for a righteous goal, that is where we start compromising, because who decides what is righteous and unrighteous? For me, it may be very righteous. And then I say, okay, I will compromise, and then I just do. So that integrity is very important of the means and the goal. If you read the Holy Gita of Swami Chinmayananji, this becomes very, very clear. One of the best commentaries I have read, many commentaries, Vinoba Bhave and so many others I have read, but one of the best commentaries I have read is of Swami Chinmayananji. When he spoke about this verse especially, Karmanyavadhikaraste, first time when I heard, it was a revelation to me also, because I also thought the same way. That, how can it be? You don't expect the result and you can't work.
Mr. Sridhar, you've said two things that I agree with and I find mutually contradictory. So you've enjoined us to focus on the positive, to tune out the noise and the shrillness, and to concentrate on that 10% or the parts of society that we find to be positive and beneficial. And at the same time, you've told us that the trend is toward, we're all attracted to that other 10%, the 90%, the shrill, the noisy. So it seems to me that the dynamic, the underlying dynamic, is that society tends in a direction that is increasingly noisy, increasingly violent, adharmic, however you want to describe it. That if we are in our own, on our own path, performing our own activities to the best of our ability, hoping to do good, but not considering that there's this larger trend away from justice, away from righteousness, however you want to describe it, then don't you think we run the risk that we succumb to these larger, more powerful forces? How can we as individuals at once focus on our own individual path and then counter these larger dynamics that are at work?
Thank you. According to me, if you're in control of your energy, nothing can bother you. It all boils down to whether you know yourself, whether you know the energy flow in your body, and whether you are still inside. Let the crowd be there. Let the noise be there. I'm not saying the noise is wrong. That's why I mentioned that there are 4 categories. I'm not saying this is wrong and this is right. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying there are 4 categories. And you need to be still in all states. So even if there is shrillness all around, and you are still in control of your energy. I would not want to be led, okay, by this noise which says that this is the truth. Now, if I have to get into specifics and talking about the subject here and about religion and spirituality, today we see in the news, this is what is God, this is what is spirituality. Okay, I'm saying question that. Are we allowed to question that? Do we have the guts to question that? If we question it, what happens? Do we get slapped? The question is someone imposing something on me or allowing me to make a choice and think for myself and allow me to be still and go on the path that I want to do? Now, the 10% who are the people who are the quieter ones, the reason I mentioned them is to bring into light that it's not just 10%, maybe it's 50%, maybe it's more. But these are the unseen worlds and unseen people who are making a difference anyways, which people don't know about. Now, this prevalent decadence or a depression that everything is just not working out in society. India is not just there. The world is going to the dogs. I mean, so many of these sentences, and we live in this feeling of negativity. I feel to counter that it depends on where you want to focus your sights on. And the moment you focus your sights on people like this, then probably you'll find the light again glowing in your life. This is what a point I'm trying to make here. Yeah, thanks.
Okay, about spirituality, I have a very fundamental question. People ask us to do good, to walk on the right path, always, and do not go on the wrong way, okay? What is wrong, what is right, vary from point to point, person to person. I'm not going into that debate. But we try to follow, those who want to follow the right path, we try to follow because we know that by following the right path, you'll go to the goal. And somewhere down the line, you find over many years that going to right path does not reach you to the goal. There is no goal. You may not reach anywhere. You are just following the right path. You are so conditioned that there's a lot of bad things happening. You cannot take a step against them, whatever. You cannot go out of the right path. But your right path is not reaching anywhere. There is no goal. It's an unending right path. Number one. Number two, it questions the fundamental belief that about life and death also. If there is God, then right path, I will be supported. I don't see there is they say that if you are in the right path, you will be supported in some form. You say you're in the right path, but you're all alone. The system is not supporting you. You are all moving in a dead end in a right path. And death happens. You see deaths all around without reason. I come from Bengal, and I am giving a recent example of Rituparna Ghosh, who was a brilliant personality in Bengal, and he dies a meaningless death. Not a single person can say he was bad. Now, how does spirituality explain this? Are you saying there is God? Are you saying good will lead somewhere? What are we saying? It's only saying do good. There is no God.
Certain things are facts which have to be accepted. They are principles. They don't depend on individuals and their performances. Law of gravity is a fact, is a law. You may be a big scientist or you may be an ordinary man. The law of gravity will work equally for both of us. Same way, life and death, they go by certain laws, certain principles. I have to come to know of those principles and align myself to that. Then I start seeing the results. Anybody who is born is going to die. So there is no question of people who are good, how can it be that they continue to live forever? They will have to drop dead at some point or the other. Right? And what decides? Their karma decides. So again, there is a system. That is one aspect. Second aspect is, when I become good, many people have that equation in the mind that goodness is equal to weakness. Goodness is equal to dumbness. And so I don't want to be weak. I don't want to be dumb. If I have to be strong, I have to be manipulative. Now that's a conditioning here. I have to again understand the principle of life, that when I am doing good, I am not doing good for somebody else. I am doing good because when I do good, when I walk the right path, the honest path, I am an integrated individual. I do not create a split within myself. I live a much more stronger life. I don't have to fear. I have to tell one lie, and then to support that one lie, how many more lies would I have to keep telling? But if I am an honest person, I leave it. I don't have to bother. In fact, people who tell lies, they need stronger memory power. Because they have to keep on remembering which lie they have to tell to whom and what. It's a pain. So you live a life of goodness because you are convinced of the inherent power of goodness. And honestly, the people who are good, one day Swami Chinmayananji was in a talk, in a satsang, and like this, open answer, question answer session. So one person asked that in spite of all the spiritual knowledge in this country, in spite of all the cultural heritage in this country, why is it that we are still where we are? Why is there so much of corruption? Why is there so much of poverty? All this, what is happening? And he said, it's because of you good people. And that man was taken aback. He said, how can you say it's because of good people? He said, precisely it's because of you good people, because your goodness is passive goodness. Your goodness is not dynamic, aggressive goodness. Your goodness is passive. Bichara bhala admi. What a stupid expression that is. Bichara bhala admi. Wo to bichara hai. What bichara hai? If he is a good man, he is a strong man, how can he be bichara? We don't have the conviction in our goodness because we follow goodness because we are told to follow like a moral instruction. Be good, do good, you are a good boy. I don't have any conviction of that power. Why do I have to be good? So some fellow who is a wicked fellow, who is a bully and who gets away doing everything, so then I feel that, strength is equal to being wicked and being a bully. And now I am scared because if I become that, I lose my tag of being a good boy. So then somehow I manage to be good, but be under that pressure of goodness. Oh God, I can't reach anywhere. What the hell is happening? And why should I still follow? You see the goodness, that example was set by Krishna. Again, I'm giving the same example again because he is one ideal. Even in today's world, one ideal is Krishna who can be followed. Because all kinds of corruption and wickedness he was surrounded by, but he remained steadfast in his goodness and he achieved everything that he had to achieve. So people who are good, they are the people who have clarity. Please remember, goodness is not equal to confusion. You reach the goal because you are clear that this is the goal, and then the means that I follow is uncompromising. In that I am good, in that I am steadfast. And again, please remember, good people are not dumb people. Good people are smart people. They know, in Vedanta we call it as Sattva Guna. People who have Sattva Guna, their mind is so free of selfishness, of greed, of jealousy, of lust, passion. They can think, in so-called management language, out of the box very easily. They know what kind of solutions can be thought about to reach the goal. So they are not people who are weak, who are, kuch bhi ho jaye, chalo, it's okay, mila to theek, nahi mila to theek, hanky-panky type of people. No, absolutely focused, clear as to how to reach it. Any obstacles come, they know how to overcome it. Hanuman is an example. Tremendous strength and reach the goal. Impossible things he has achieved or not. I'm giving you all examples from the mythology, just so that we have that right perspective of spiritual knowledge. You can find those examples even in your day-to-day life, some of them who follow those, and they reach where they have to reach. So goodness is not going to make you weak. Goodness, you must have the strength. That clarity will give you that strength.
So why do you call it as a goodness? Just change the name, smartness, you start calling smartness.
Because smartness has a connotation of manipulation, cunningness, unnecessarily. Otherwise, you can have it, you can have smart goodness also. Simple. Yeah, by changing the connotation, if things change, wonderful, change it, doesn't matter.
So, but what is happening is being a good means they are
actually
becoming
nothing,
falling a
yeah.
prey.
It's actually
You see, the equation in our mind is they're exclusive, right? Smart people are not good people are not smart people. So we have created an exclusion. So just by renaming goodness to smartness, nothing will happen. Our understanding has to change. So then coin a new expression, smart goodness, good smartness, whatever.
You know, to address you, you said the goal is there and I am on my path and my path is very good, but my goal is, I don't reach my goal. That's what your question was? Suppose you bring your goal forward and you say, my next step is my goal. And my next step is good, and I'm taking my next step well, and my next step well, and my next step well. Does that make a difference in perspective? Yeah? Because basically, what are you in control of? Can you tell me? You can control one thing.
Are you sure?
Yeah,
Are you sure?
of course you can. Are you in control of your breath?
Tomorrow, no. Today.
How many times do you breathe in and breathe out per
Because
minute?
I'm allowed to. Tomorrow morning, if I die in my sleep, what happens? I can die.
As long as you are alive, you have a control. That's what he's saying.
Then it is not a control.
No, you can. You can choose right now to breathe deeply and slowly. Simple.
That is because I am alive.
Yeah, so that's okay. Why do you want to control death? Have it be in control of life, which is right now in your
That is what,
hand.
I am not in control of life.
So learn the methods to do it. That's what he's telling you.
I'll ask you a question. You came from home, right? Were you in control of the guy who caught you by cab? Were you in control of this ceiling which may have fallen on your head? Are you in control of anything?
That's what I'm saying. I'm not control of the body. I'm not control of the outside.
So where is the
Tomorrow my heart
question
stops,
coming
I'm
up?
not control. I'm not control of
You're
anything.
not in control of the goal as well. Are you
And
getting the
whole
point here?
responsibility comes to me. You can reach your goal. There is the power.
Enjoy just the process.
There is the power.
Yeah,
I
it's
have
just the
nothing
process.
in control. And then
Anyway,
they
yeah.
say nothing is, everything is you can do it. Nothing else.
I have one question for Swamiji.
Just one moment
Sure.
before the question. I just like to tell you one point. Whatever we are is a result of our thoughts. And to think is in our control. We appear to be out of control because, there's an author called Eknath Ishwaran. He said very nicely, we don't think our thoughts, the thoughts think us. They just come anytime. So we feel helpless, we feel absolutely not in sync. If you just manage the mind, in Vedanta we say that life management is equal to mind management is equal to thought management, full stop. You manage your thoughts and there are various methods. That is what spirituality is telling us. You can be in control of your life and your responses by controlling your thoughts, and that is completely in your hand. To be a victim of life is ordinary, is very common. Anybody will be a victim of life. What is the big deal if I am a spiritual person and still I am a victim of life? That is teaching you that how you can be a master of your life by you managing your thoughts. And that control comes into your life after that. And your entire future depends on your choices right now, your thinking right now. Control your life right now, control your thoughts right now, your future is also controlled. So that is what spirituality is all about.
The thought is our brain, and that is controlled by all the biology.
No, thought is not brain, sorry. Brain is an organ. Thought functions through that organ.
Yeah, but
There's a difference between mind and brain.
but whatever it is, something is working in our head. So that is dependent upon all your environment, like what kind of nutrition it is going. Suppose you take.
No, I agree. Those factors are there, but there are experiments and there are enough examples of people who, in spite of all the factors being negative, they have been able to still keep their mind very sane and very focused and very balanced. No, it's possible. You have to just explore it much more, keeping the mind open that there is a possibility of me taking charge of my life. And then start finding avenues. There are enough avenues open and available to take charge of one's life. I cannot take charge of things around me, but I can take charge of my life, definitely.
Yeah, I'd like to add one word to what Swamiji said. According to me, it's about managing your energy. If you're in control of your energy and you can manage it and understand it, thoughts, body, everything falls into place. Do you know how much food you eat per day? What kind of minerals does it generate? Do you know how much of air goes into your lungs? Small things. When we say that we know ourselves, how much do we know ourselves? That's the first point. And frankly, the more you know yourself and more you understand your energy, your body will tell you exactly what is right and what is wrong and how to go. Trust me on that. You know, we are blessed with a supracomputer or something more than that. It's so intelligent. And things that, can't be empirically proved immediately, but which are experiential. Say maybe something like intuition. An intuitive feeling of, don't go there, You either have a choice of listening to it or not listening to it. That's completely a choice. Every moment is a choice. And finally, where you reach is a matter of choice, right? Every choice you've taken. So I would come down to this point of just manage your energy and understand the principles upon which energy functions. There are a lot of principles on which it functions. We use everyday words like, "Arey, mera uska, frequency match hota hai." Now, why do you use the word frequency? Mera wavelength match hota hai. Why do you use a physics term? Why do you use wavelength? वो जब भी अंदर आता है ना, current दौड़ता है. Why do you use current? Have you even imagined and wondered why you use certain words from science to express an emotion? Because science and spirituality are just two sides of the same coin in different languages. This is what, the more you study this subject, the more you find out how the great sages were great scientists and how the great scientists were great sages. It's just that they spoke different languages. So in Indian mythology, they used to say that maybe, maybe not. Everything is maybe, maybe not. Probability, right? If you study quantum physics, what are they saying today? Probability. Atoms are probably moving, electrons are probably moving or probably not. They've come down to that stage. So everybody is on the same plane. They're just saying the same thing in different lingos.
You were talking about people reacting to action and wanting more this thing. But in my day-to-day living, commuting up and down, I find that people, if there is trouble, let it be. Like the girl who got acid thrown on her face at a station. The man who did it actually just walked away. That is the reaction of the Indians today. Our country is in a mess because of this. Mera kya jata hai, mera kuch nahi hota hai. That is what I want the press and the spiritual people to address.
I'm not representative of the press. Those people, say 50 people watched that. Okay, 50 people watched it. Assume. Yes.
I commute by bus and train. Yes. And every time I travel, I am subjected to this. I observe the senior citizen seats being occupied by youngsters who just sit there and watch the old people standing. And when I get up to tell them, get up, give them the seat, the conductor, the driver, everyone objects. I want the spiritual head to address this. The conscience is dead in the Indians.
No, that is true. We are in a mess because of the selfishness that we are into. Absolutely, at every level. And before we start fighting corruption and big things out there, start following basic human values and start being more sensitive to people around. It begins from there. A change begins from there. We recently launched a movement called Transforming Indians to Transform India. And at 7 levels when we speak, one of the basic levels is at the physical level, follow all these things. So it is important to start from there. No doubt.
The Anna Hazare movement that happened, okay? There was this tremendous gush of patriotism which sort of arose and everybody became patriotic and it became a peer pressure. Tu jaan hi raha hai Anna Hazare case mein? So that means you're not patriotic. It became to that level. So even people who didn't want to go were forced to go just to keep up with the Joneses, as they say, okay? Now I wonder how many people bribed the cops on the way to go to Jantar Mantar. Ki mere ko jaldi pahunchna hai, ye le 50 rupees. The point I'm making is, are we realizing what is corruption here? We point to the other guy and say that politician is corrupt and this is corrupt and that corrupt. Aren't we corrupt? I'm not saying we are. I'm saying that's something that we need to question. If you're paying 50 rupees under the table Are we corrupt or not? Finished. And do we have a right to blame anybody else? So the question of being bold and, how do we be bold? Yes, we need to be bold. We've come to that conclusion here. Now, how do we be bold? That's the point here, right? According to me, being bold is first understanding who you are. Yesterday, 2 weeks back, I attended a training where this Harvard professor was talking about leadership training, okay? So after 3 days of excessive jargon and leadership thoughts, he said, according to me, therefore, can I conclude that leadership is all about managing one's energy and managing the energy of those around us. What happens when you manage your energy? What happens when what happens when one breath comes out? This. Has anybody analyzed this? You can't see it, but there's something happening in this. Why is it that about 80, 100 people are here? Is it a coincidence that you all are here? Or were you all meant to be here? Questions, right? According to me, every breath creates a particular frequency. This frequency, if it's strong enough, it impacts the guy next to me, and the guy next to me, and the guy next to me. Why do we get followers of certain people who like to imbibe what the leader says and then follows on the leader's path? What is the energy that works in such behavior? It is precisely this frequency that we are not able to see, but we are able to sense it, which is what is happening. So if your frequency is good and you emit a strong resonance, a strong wave, you will automatically find that you're able to impact people around you, and it moves like concentric circles, like ripples. सिर्फ पहले पत्थर तो डालो, पत्थर नहीं डालते पब्लिक, डरते हैं. First डालो पत्थर. Yes, please.
This is for this fiction. I think I just want to take that thought forward. When you say one energy creates ripples around us and all, I think whatever discussion we are talking to non-fiction festival, since we are getting a lot of positive thoughts here and we will discuss after today, can we continue with this thing on online media where all of us can be there and we participate so that breath, what is saying, influence beyond, we continue beyond today?
I'd like to introduce something here, okay, before the question. Would you want to spend 1 minute just meditating? Okay? I'll tell you why. Right now, I talked about the noise and the lack of noise, or the noise and sound, right? Noise and music, okay? Let's experience what happens when we meditate and our breath becomes slower. For those who have done it before, it will not be something new. But those who haven't can take away something from it. Right, so just close your eyes, sit straight and close your eyes, right? And just concentrate on your breath. The way it comes into your nostrils, goes in, and it comes out. So in and out. In and out. If thoughts come, let them come. Just say thank you to them and concentrate back on your breath, right? In and out. When you feel like opening your eyes, you may. Are we lost in a different world? Come on, give me a feedback. 1 minute back, how was it? Now, how is it? Any feedback?
I think I forgot my question.
Just what happened in this 1 minute? Your breathing became slower and slower. So much so that it became this and this. Okay, it's just 1 minute. Suppose you meditated for 10 minutes. What would have happened? Half an hour, 1 hour, 1 day. So Rishi Muni 300 saal tak meditation kar rahe hain. I mean, can we even, we can't imagine. We can't imagine what their levels would be, right? They would be operating at a delta level of frequency, which is like 0 to 4 hertz of the brain, right? So just 1 minute you have calmed down. This is what my point was. Now, how many of you, be honest, do you all feel in control now? How many of you feel I can do it. I can. Chalo, kuch karte hain. How many of you are getting that spark inside? Very few. You should meditate for 2 minutes then. But the more you control you watch your breath. It's not about controlling breath, it's about watching breath. The more you feel in it.
Thank
For
you
your
very
time.
much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir.